Hey, everybody, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, I have a big day ahead of me, and I am having yet another morning live stream. Not guaranteeing this will be a very long morning check in because I've got a big day ahead of me and I've got a lot of places to go and different stuff to do. And yeah, we're getting ready for the CPI National Gathering, National Convention, August 15th. It's going to be really, really tremendous. And, I'm heading out of town on Tuesday evening. And between now and then, I've got a lot of things I have to do. I'm headed to the printers to pick up the books that we got printed for the convention, just figuring all the different stuff out. A lot of great things are happening. If you haven't registered for the convention yet, please go ahead and do so. It's going to be really, really great. If you go ahead and register, if you're going to be in the Chicago area, please join us. It's going to be a tremendous gathering. And if you can, send us a financial gift, a contribution to help make the convention happen. Here's the registration link, cpiusa.org. The registration link is a form that I'm putting here, and if you want to donate, the contribution link is cpiusa.org/donate. But yeah, a lot of great, exciting stuff is happening, and I'm waking up here, and I decided this week I was going to do a couple morning streams. This is the third one, early morning streams where I just kind of get on here and kind of enjoy my morning unnamed diet beverage with you all, and kind of start my day with all of you. These are what I'm calling chill streams, where I'm not getting into great, huge amounts of depth about different topics. I'm just kind of starting my day with everybody and drinking my soda. Welcome everybody. In terms of what's going on in the world, we do have a couple couple items I can talk about, and then we'll do the arms exercise, and then I think we're out of here. We're not going to be on here that long. This is just me starting my day. One thing is I continue to kind of distract myself by arguing with people on Twitter about this kind of wave of new anti-communist free market rhetoric from conservatives, and I've made a number of these little like cartoons to articulate my position. One cartoon I've made is about Singapore, because people continue to point to the success of Singapore as an example of the free market. Well, I have this MAGA cartoon. Look at how successful Singapore is. That proves the free market economy. We must have a free market economy. That's a MAGA guy saying that. And I reply, in Singapore, the state owns the banks, the airlines, the utilities, shipbuilding, and it controls real estate. It's one of the most state-run economies in the world. Yes, Singapore is a heavily state-run economy. Now, their tax rate is low, but that's because the government owns pretty much everything. They have government planning. It is a heavily, heavily state-run economy, one of the Asian tigers. But yet you'll see people on social media say, oh, we have to privatize things. Look how successful Singapore is. And I mean, that's ridiculous. Singapore is a very, very heavily state-run economy. And this is one of the many fallacies that you'll get from defenders of free market capitalism. I've made a few of these memes. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you guys have seen this one before. Right? Anytime you bring up any of China's successes, they'll respond and say that, here you go. China is only successful because they're capitalists, duh. And I reply, China has state-run banks and industries, 5-year plans, and a ruling Marxist-Leninist party. So that's capitalism, but Obamacare is communism? Yeah, there we go. Now, I see someone in the chat said, hey, good morning. Would love to see you've had a friendly, good-faced discussion with Dave Smith. Well, I did, actually, and he rage quit. I was on a podcast with Craig Pasta Jardula, and it was me and two libertarians, Spike Cohen and Dave Smith. And Spike Cohen stayed on the whole time, but Dave Smith rage quit because and it was really unfortunate. And then he attacked me on Twitter afterwards about saying I'm a bad person because I support Stalin and Mao. I'm a little disappointed by that. I appreciate Dave Smith as an anti-war voice on a number of levels, but that podcast I did with Pasta, where it was two libertarians and me, and seeing Dave Smith just rage quit and then attack me on social media afterwards. I mean, he's just, he lives in this kind of Ludwig von Mises Austrian school bubble, and I burst that bubble. And I mean, I wasn't trying to be mean to him, and I don't feel that I was attacking him on a personal level. I just, I'll see if I can find the link for you. Maybe we can put on some of that today, actually, since you asked. It was about a year ago, 2 years ago, so maybe I can put some of that on today. It was a little bit disappointing, and that's one of the problems. I mean, a lot of times I will fight with people, and the fight is not, I don't want to fight with people, it's just I happen to be smarter than them, and they come at me in a rather unfriendly way, and then, the result is, I defend myself, and then they hate me. And I that's generally not a good way for things to be. But yeah, you can watch. So here's the full event with Rage. I'll just put the link in the chat. Full.
But Caleb, why don't you?
All right. Full debate with Dave Smith and Spike Cohen. I'll put the link to the full debate in the chat, and I'll show a clip from it maybe later. I don't know how much time we have this morning because I actually have to get on my way to the printers. But if you want to watch the full debate, there it is. The whole full thing is there on social media for you to watch. And I have a clip from it I can probably show maybe. I don't know if I have time for that, but anyhow, I did a report yesterday about Cuba, I had a clip of it on my channel, and then I have the full debate is here. Here, I'll put it in the other chat. But I did a report for RT yesterday about U.S. spying on Cuba, so I'm going to put that on. So here we go.
Correspondent Caleb Maupin has more on the story.
It's all over mainstream media that the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency is now setting up a task force in Cuba. You see, that's how super-secret, covert government intelligence operations are carried out. You announce them on TV ahead of time. Well, the lack of secrecy here makes sense. Everybody knows the CIA has been trying to destabilize Cuba for decades. The Cubans are not surprised.
The intentions here are no surprise, since Cuba has long been the target of CIA efforts at espionage, subversion and destabilization, including terrorism.
The Trump administration has certainly doubled down on the standard rhetoric against Havana that has saturated Washington for years.
Cuba right now is a country that is about to be a failed state because of the communist policies of the past several decades. Communism should never be allowed to lead this country, and the president obviously is strictly opposed to it and all the dangers that it reaps.
The people who are in charge of the country don't know what they're doing. They don't know. They don't know how to fix their economy. They don't know how, they don't understand basic concepts. And I think the challenge that Cuba has faced for the last 15 years is they want to somewhat improve their economy, but they're afraid that if they improve it too much, they'll lose political control over people.
This is nothing new. The United States tried to overthrow the Cuban government in 1961 with the Bay of Pigs invasion. That didn't go so well.
It is clear that the invasion operation was based on the hope that the brigade would be able to maintain itself in Cuba long enough to prevail by attracting insurgents and defectors from the Castro armed services, but without having in advance any assurance of assistance from identified, known, controlled, trained and organized guerrillas. The agency hoped the invasion would, like a deus ex machina, produce a shock which would cause these defections.
After the Bay of Pigs invasion came Operation Mongoose.
Agreed that U.S. policy toward Cuba should aim at the downfall of Castro, and that since the measures agreed below are not likely to achieve this end, the matter should be reviewed at intervals with a view to further action.
Since then, it's been a string of failures for the United States, with some proposals that are downright terrifying. Operation Northwoods, for example, involved a proposal for carrying out a series of false flag attacks to drum up public support for invading Cuba. They talked about making it look as if Cuba had shot down a civilian airplane. Another proposal included sinking a boat full of Cuban refugees and blaming it on Fidel. Then the idea was to go ahead and engage in some rather elaborate deception, stage fake funerals with a fake casualty list, and involve the media in an elaborate scheme. They were even thinking of blaming Fidel Castro and the Cuban government if the U.S. Mercury flight in 1962 failed to come back to Earth. And there was another operation, ironically named Operation Dirty Trick. Here were the particulars.
The objective is to provide irrevocable proof that should the Mercury manned orbit flight fail, the fault lies with the communists at Cuba. This is to be accomplished by manufacturing various pieces of evidence, which would prove electronic interference on the part of the Cubans.
The plotting wasn't all on a large scale. One proposal involved trying to drive a wedge between Cuba and the Soviet Union by messing with sugar exports.
Through a clandestine operation which was not detected and is not traceable, we were able to contaminate 800 of these sugar bags with a chemical used in the alcohol denaturation process while the bags were in the warehouse and before they were reloaded on the vessel.
Fabian Escalante, the founder of Cuban intelligence, actually wrote a book called 634 Ways to Kill Fidel. Some of the plots were particularly outrageous. They tried to poison him with a milkshake, and they tried to plant a bomb in a seashell. In 1960, when Fidel Castro visited the United States, his shoes were laced with a special kind of salt intended to make his beard fall out. The hope was that Fidel would be so distressed by the loss of his beard that he would reach for the nearest cigar, a cigar that had been laced with poison. U.S. operations against Cuba have taken some unique and elaborate turns. For example, during the 1990s, the U.S. government funded the island's hip-hop and punk rock music scene. The idea was to try and manipulate it and turn it into an anti-government protest movement. And we still have no idea what was behind that mysterious Havana syndrome that prevented U.S.-Cuba relations from becoming really solid after respective embassies were finally opened up under Obama.
The sound pressure intensity levels of the recorded and audible sounds are not, by themselves, the cause of reported long-term harm. We believe the recorded sounds are mechanical or biological in origin, rather than electronic. The most likely source is the Indies short-tailed cricket.
So yes, now the United States is sending in the CIA to work against the Cuban government. Meanwhile, we've got the Cubans yawning and saying, oh boy, we've never dealt with that before. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.
Just had a little bit of a spill here, so I had to clean that up while the video was playing. And yeah, but anyhow, so yeah, we're probably I'm gonna do the arms exercise like I do in the mornings. I'm gonna do that here, and then from there I might show a clip of the Dave Smith thing. I might also comment. Somebody sent a buy me a coffee. I wanted me to respond to some stuff from Michael Hudson. I might respond to that as well. But why don't we do the arms exercise, since that's something we're committed to doing. So I'm going to do the arms exercise that we do here on these morning streams, part of our morning routine. So let me just pull up the John Philip Sousa marches like we do, and we'll do the arms exercise. Then from there, I'll look at where the time is at, and we'll see what we have to do. But I really do have to be on my way because I have to get all the way out to Queens and pick up the books and, you know, pick up the T-shirts and, you know, and I'm going to be on WBAI radio, and it looks like I've got some work for my main job today, and, you know, so I got a lot going on, and that's good, right? Because we are high output. We are very, very productive here at the Center for Political Innovation. We're doing great stuff. So yeah, I'm going to do the arms exercise that I've been trying to do every morning. I've successfully done it every day this week, and this will be, you know, the 5th time I've done it this week, which is good. Yeah, we'll do the arms exercise, and then after that, we'll be on. We'll see what time it is, where we're at, and see what comes next. So, all right.
All right, 12 minutes and 57 seconds. All right, almost 13 minutes. Would you look at that? All right. Whew, that feels good. That feels very, very good. And yeah, we're almost ready to start the day here. Just going to continue drinking the unnamed diet beverage. It always feels so good for my back to do those exercises. Helps with posture, helps with upper body strength. I will say that someone sent 3 coffees this morning, and they also sent me a long rant, and they said that the problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit that I talk about is a problem of industrial capitalism rather than financial capitalism. And then they gave statistics about the spending power of the average American versus the amount of industrial output. What they're missing is that financialization is an effort to deal with the problem of overproduction, but it doesn't make it go away. In fact, it's one of the main driving forces behind financialization. The reason our economy is so heavily financialized is to deal with the problem of overproduction, and that the problem of overproduction still exists. It's just that production is done on a global scale. I mean, that's what the New York Times economist Paul Krugman is famous for talking about, is how a single laptop can be made in 57 different countries. And so when you talk about workers not being able to buy back what they produce, this happens on a global scale rather than, a nationwide scale. So showing these statistics about, Americans spend more than they produce in factories. Well, the factory apparatus is global right now. And financialization, I think pretty highly of Michael Hudson. I haven't had time to really study his work, to be honest. But I have seen interviews with him where he refers to the problem of overproduction.
I've seen interviews with him where he says the same things that I say about artificial intelligence, driving, a long-term crisis rooted in the tendency of the falling rate of profits. So I don't see him as being at odds with what I talk about on here at all, actually. What I do see, though, is that his focus is on financialization and the financial aspect of how capitalism is maintained with fictitious capital, with credit, and how he has even come to some conclusions about Germany in World War I that I'm not sure line up. They certainly don't line up with the classical Marxist position that Germany had a more industrial economy and it was fighting against the British and the Americans that had a more financial economy, and that might be true. I don't know the details of it. I do know that Germany's economy in the lead up to World War I was very, very social democratic, and that the British and the Americans were very much focused on financialization, but I don't know if that made the Germans somehow the good guys in World War I. There were some socialists who did come to that conclusion. One of them was James Connolly, the leader of the Irish freedom struggle. He felt that based on the way Germany's economy was set up, that Germany was a progressive force, that the British and the Americans were the main danger. And that's why he launched his armed uprising during the First World War, the Easter Uprising of 1916. And he apparently did get some German backing in order to do that. But Rosa Luxemburg and many others felt that Germany was not the progressive force in World War I, and they ultimately lost World War I. And so I mean, it's interesting. I don't have a negative opinion of Michael Hudson at all. I tend to think highly of Michael Hudson and his work. In the interviews I've seen with him, he's very on point. I do know that Michael Hudson has an interesting history with the LaRouche movement, right? So he, as someone who takes Marxist economics very seriously, he apparently knew Lynn Marcus when Lyndon LaRouche went by Lynn Marcus, and he was, in the 1970s, he was on pretty friendly terms with the National Caucus of Labor Committees, and that, this economics that I talk about on these streams, the problem of overproduction, the tendency of the falling rate of profit, this is the kind of thing that, Sam Marcy, the founder of the Workers' World Party, talked about. Victor Perlow, the economist of the Communist Party during the 1970s, he talked about this. This is the kind of thing Lynn Marcus or Lyndon LaRouche talked about at one point before he switched to kind of focusing on the American School of Economics. But similar approach, right? We need growth. We need to oppose degrowth. We need the economy to be controlled in order to have growth. He framed it in terms of American school rather than Marxist, but it's the same kind of worldview. That worldview, unfortunately, there aren't many people who talk that way. In the communist countries, that was kind of the standard view. But you'll notice, like, for example, Richard Wolff, who is a very friendly person who I, interacted with on a friendly level many times. He knows about this stuff, but he chooses not to talk about it. And Richard Wolff very much believes degrowth is fine. Richard Wolff very much thinks that the way to criticize capitalism is to simply focus on the employer versus employee and the unfairness of that relationship. Whereas, Michael Hudson, myself, drawing from the work of Lynn Marcus, drawing from the work of Sam Marcy, drawing from the work of Fred Goldstein and others, my understanding is that capitalism holds back growth, and that we need the means of production to be centralized in order to ensure growth in the long term. Most people who call themselves Marxists don't think that anymore. What they believe is that we need worker cooperatives, etc. So, Michael Hudson is much closer to me. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Degrowth is not good. Degrowth is fascism. It's trying to save the system with destruction of productive forces. And, I tend to, think highly of Michael Hudson, so I don't have an issue with him. I haven't studied his work that focuses on financialization, so maybe I can do that at some point. Right now, I'm focused on building for our convention coming up in Chicago. And that's why this stream is probably going to end here in a few minutes, because I'm just kind of finishing my soda, and then I've got to hit the road because I have to pick up the T-shirts today. I have to pick up the books today. I have a radio interview. I'm going to be on WBAI Radio, New York City, in the noon hour. So tune in if you want to hear me on that. Looks like I'm going to be doing a story today, so I've got a bit on my plate for today. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to go on. I'm actually not going to play the Dave Smith interview because I just don't want to get negative, right? I feel like it got pretty negative, and that's the unfortunate thing. You know, the internet spaces bring out the worst in people, right? And unfortunately, you know, that debate that I had with Dave Smith and Spike Cohen, I was kind of, it was 2 against 1. And I did a pretty good job, but it got a little bit negative. And that's the problem, is that, you know, these libertarian forces, what bothers me, and I guess I shouldn't, my problem is I take this too seriously. And that, you know, the kind of vulgar, hateful language that kind of libertarian forces will use, and the arrogance, the way that they, you know, they assume that no one who's at all intelligent could disagree with them. You know, it tends to get me very fired up. And, you know, I mean, if you don't take this seriously, if it's all just a game, you know, who cares? But for me, I do actually take this seriously. And so, I mean, and I will make memes. I don't want to get negative on here. I just don't want to get negative, right? And so I feel like if I put that debate on, it's going to put me in a negative place. I just don't want to go negative. But I did put the link in the chat. So if you want to see my interaction with Dave Smith, who rage quit the debate, and Spike Cohen, you can watch the whole thing. I mean, it was a whole episode of Convo Couch, and I feel like I did very well, but that doesn't always pay out, right? You know, sometimes you can win the debate, but it doesn't really help you. And in that case, you know, I respect Dave Smith as an anti-war voice, you know, and all of that, but he hates my guts because I did well in a debate against him, because he's got that Austrian school arrogance. These people, they study Austrian economics, and they think they know everything there is to know about economics, and they don't. Austrian school economics is a lot of flim-flam, right? And if you just know, like, basic economics, supply and demand, and then you read a bunch of Austrian school stuff, they think they're the smartest people in the world, and they have no idea, right? And that they think socialism, they have a caricature of socialism, as socialism is the government trying to make everyone equal and taxing hardworking rich people and redistributing their incomes. And they say things, you know, the Austrian school crowd will say things that just have no basis in fact. They will say that no monopolies would ever exist if it wasn't for the government. Well, that's not true, right? Monopolies arise naturally. And in fact, the government, I mean, the capitalists themselves have created all kinds of mechanisms for the state to break up monopolies. They will say, I've heard many times, not only will they say that, you know, no monopoly would ever exist if it wasn't for the government. That's one claim I've heard. Another claim that I will hear from Austrian school people, you know, they will say, well, the government is only capable of creating more government jobs, right? If the government creates jobs, the only way that stimulates the economy, it only creates more government jobs. Well, no, that's not actually true, right? If the government hires a teacher, pays that teacher a decent salary, he or she spends that money at the grocery store, and that results in more jobs for grocery workers. She spends that money at Home Depot, and that results in more jobs for Home Depot workers. You know, but I've seen, you know, Austrian school people insist, no, if the government gives someone a job, the only job that can result from that is more government jobs. That's not actually true. And they make these kind of broad, sweeping statements about economics that don't actually match reality. And, you know, and they frame it in a lot of arrogance. And they, you know, it just frustrates me, because I think the biggest problem, my biggest frustration with the so-called Marxists is that they're not interested in economics at all. None. They are only interested in calling people racist and calling people sexist. They want to talk about America's an evil, racist country. America's sexist. That, you know, they want to analyze movies and talk about gender oppression in movies. They don't talk about economics. And as a result, you know, I've even been attacked on this YouTube channel. As this YouTube channel got going, people came on there. He sounds like some kind of libertarian. He's always talking about economics. Well, no, my views are the opposite of libertarians, especially in terms of economics. But the fact that I even care about that is, you know, considered to be, you know, some kind of deviation, some kind of, problem. You know, I did. Yeah, You know, I mean, it's just, you know, Marxism, they are committed to the spiritual part of Marxism, which is very dark and unhelpful, and they negate the economic side. So yeah, but Penny has done a lot. I'm actually on my, that's one thing I'll be doing today. Penny is picking up your book that you wrote about the Union of Sahel States and their amazing economic policies. On a previous stream, you asked about the cotton factory that they made and their cultivation of their gold resources, and you know, I responded to that. So yeah. But anyhow, I think I probably should wrap this up. Yeah, I think well, you know what I'm gonna do, because I'm in that kind of mood, and I'm kind of in a good place this morning. I woke up and I'm feeling good. It's one of those summer mornings where it's bright very, very early. I am gonna put on my favorite John Philip Sousa march, which is the Manhattan Beach March. And I think the reason I like it so much is I really like strong melodies. And there are three movements in the Manhattan Beach March, but the middle movement is apparently, it's an Irish melody. I've never heard this anywhere except Manhattan Beach March, but apparently this was an Irish melody that John Philip Sousa became familiar with. And it's very hopeful and optimistic, and it's like the middle movement of his Manhattan Beach March. You know, so it's very short. It's like a 2-minute march that he made, but it's just really great. And so I'm going to put on the Manhattan Beach March, but watch out for the middle, you know, the middle movement. Dun da dun da 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 dun. Da 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 dun 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 dun. All right, so we're gonna put on the Manhattan Beach March, and then we'll probably wrap this up after that. So, yeah, why? Okay, we're just gonna Manhattan Beach March. I just downloaded the video. Ah, here we go. Yep, that is Manhattan Beach March, which I really, really like.
And I think that's where we're ending for today because I've got a big day ahead of me. So thank you, everybody. If you haven't registered for the CPI convention, please go ahead and do so. If you haven't sent us a contribution, if you can send us $10, $20, etc., to support the convention, go to cpiusa.org/donate. It's going to be a tight squeeze this year because of everything costing so much and other things, but we need all the help we can get. Send us a gift to make the convention happen and be successful. We are the Center for Political Innovation. We're doing great stuff, right? We are building a community of resistance and anti-imperialism, and we're building the kind of movement this country urgently needs. Yeah, we are CPI, and I'm so excited to be in Chicago with everybody next week. It's going to be really, really awesome. I'm really, really excited. Yep, that's us, the Center for Political Innovation, and we are building the movement this country urgently needs. So dare to struggle, dare to win, everybody, and have a great day. I know I'm going to have a great day, and I hope you do too. Thanks.